Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the National Creating Coherence webinar series. My name is Sam Katz, and our guest today is Shankari Wegman. Shankari Wegman has a lifelong interest in empowering people to live their optimal health. She has 3 bachelor's degrees, biology, pre-med, and women's studies, philosophy with a focus on bioethics, and Maharshi Ayurveda. Shankari has completed her master's degree in physiology and is now completing her PhD in Maharshi Ayurveda and integrative medicine at Maharshi International University. She has been a teacher of the TM program for 18 years and is on the board of trustees at the Maharshi School, an innovative preschool to 12 that combines preparatory academics and self-development. Shankari lectures on Ayurveda at universities and high schools throughout the country. The title of her talk today is 5 Essential, Easy-to-Use Daily Ayurvedic Habits. If you would like to ask Shankari a question, please email your questions to questions@tm.org. That's questions plural at tm.org, or you can just put them into the Zoom chat box. Welcome, Shankari. You can go ahead and unmute and begin. It's nice to have you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That was such a lovely introduction. And thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Shankari, and I'm so honored to be here and talk a little bit about today's topic, which is 5 essential, easy to follow daily Ayurvedic habits. And one thing that I want to mention is that, there's so many wonderful habits, but I've tried to consolidate it into just 5 so that it feels like it's something that is more accessible, because these are really keystone habits. They affect everything else. And so just doing one of them is helping the whole physiology. So I thought that we would start first with just talking about this word Ayurveda, Ayurvedic. And some of you might be familiar with what this word means, but some it might be a new word. So let's start with this word Ayurvedic. What is this word? Well, it comes from Sanskrit, which is an ancient language, and this word comes from the word Ayurveda. And Ayurveda is an ancient system of healthcare from India that's made up of 2 words. It's made up of Ayu, and it's made up of Veda. Ayu means life, and Veda means knowledge. So when we put these words together, Ayurveda is understood as the science of life, the knowledge of life, the science of life, and lifespan. So not just the science of life, but also the quality of life that allows us to have a long lifespan in happiness and good health. So if you were to Google this word Ayurveda, there's just millions of different sites. It's increasing in popularity every single day. more and more people are turning to this ancient science. One thing that we say here is we say Maharishi Ayurveda. And why do we say that? It's really to distinguish it and differentiate it from, all the different Ayurveda interpretations that are out there. Maharishi's really been the one to put Ayurveda back into its wholeness. This knowledge was lost over time, wars, colonization, etc., like that. And Maharishi really restored that Veda to Ayurveda. Veda means knowledge. And so we say Maharishi Ayurveda because Maharishi's really brought out the fact that this knowledge is to connect the individual to their own inner intelligence of their own physiology. So we say Maharishi Ayurveda is a comprehensive, prevention-oriented system of natural health that addresses the mind, it addresses the body, and the near environment, and also the far environment. And in this way, we say that Maharishi Ayurveda is really about health and balance. Now, this word health in Ayurveda is defined by this word swastha. Swa means the self, and sta means to be established. So this is such a beautiful definition of health. Health from Ayurveda means to be established in the self. It's so beautiful. If you're established in the self, then you're deeply rooted in great ease because you're at home with yourself. When you come home, you feel very at home, very at ease. And so that's that same feeling of health, feeling very at home in your own self, deeply connected to your own being. And in that way, that inner intelligence of the body is always flowing, it's always lively. And when that flow is there, then that natural value of health, healing, balance is always there. And that's really what Maharishi Ayurveda is about, reconnecting the individual with the inner intelligence. So self-referral healing is always taking place so that balance is always being maintained. When balance is always being maintained, then there's this aspect of prevention, that everything, before anything is even, beginning, it's being prevented from taking root. Any imbalances are prevented from taking root because the body is experiencing that state of balance. If you're experiencing that state of balance, you're experiencing a great state of ease because of that connection to the self. If there's any loss of connection to the self, then there starts to become an uneasiness or a feeling of, uncomfortable kind of feeling. So it's that loss of connection that starts that process of dis-ease, because it's that loss of connection with the self. And if that disease is allowed to, just continue, then this starts to become a little bit more deeply rooted. And then there starts to become some chronic expressions of that disease. So Maharishi Ayurveda is really about enlivening the inner intelligence for balance. And in this way, it's prevention oriented. Even before something can even come, it's not really allowed to take root because the body is so deeply connected to itself. So when we're talking about balance, we're talking about balance not just of the mind with the body and the environment. It is that, but it's also, we're talking about balance with this word called the doshas. For some of you, you might be familiar with this word. Doshas, it's a very abstract word. It just simply means that it's a governing intelligence. These doshas are governing some aspect of our physiology. And there's three main doshas, vata, pitta, and kapha, which I'll be talking about. And each of these doshas are made up of two of the five elements. Ayurveda recognizes these five great elements: space, air, fire, water, and earth. And each of the doshas are made up of two of these five elements, with one element a little bit more predominant. So for example, these doshas are vata, pitta, and kapha. Now, vata is made up of space and air. It's known as the lightest dosha, but it's predominantly more wind. Pitta is made up of fire and water, but it's predominantly more fire. And kapha is made up of earth and water, but it's predominantly more earth. I like to talk about these doshas. If you're not able to remember the vata, pitta, kapha, you can just think of them as wind, fire, and earth. And you might know that 70s group earth, wind, and fire. So it's the same thing with the doshas. You have wind, fire, and earth creating beautiful harmony in the physiology in a very natural way. So when these doshas are balanced, the functions that they're governing in the physiology are also balanced. So the main function that vata dosha is governing, again, that value of wind, is that it's governing movement in the physiology, movement of mind, thoughts, movement of breath, circulation, movement of the hormones, movement of nutrients being delivered to every single cell of the physiology, muscle movement, movement of any kind. So every system has some value of movement that's being governed by vata dosha. Pitta, that fiery dosha, is governing digestion and transformation in the physiology. You can think of it as that dosha that's really providing for energy for the physiology. And in this way, it's governing metabolism as well. So it's the digestion of the foods that we're eating, anything coming in through our senses, our emotions, that are really allowing the physiology to adapt, and that's constantly giving energy to the physiology. So that's that value of pitta dosha. And then you have kapha dosha, which is made up of earth and water, predominantly earth. So it's the heaviest of the three doshas, and it's governing structure. So the actual structure of the physiology, the structure of every single system of the physiology, that value of cohesion, that value of coming together, that value of being held, is being governed by kapha dosha. So we have all three doshas in our physiology with, maybe some predominance of one or two doshas. So we can say a person might be more vata, pitta, kapha, like that, but we have all three. Now, what we also want to talk about with these 5 essential habits is that these doshas are also more predominant at different times of the day. So if we know when we do what we're doing, it's making sure that those actions are even more effortless and are really performing the full value of those actions, such as sleeping, proper sleep, proper exercise, etc., like that. So when we're talking about the when, we're really connecting to this knowledge of the circadian rhythms. That's really what we're talking about. And circadian rhythms are these 24-hour cycles that are part of the body's internal clock, and they're running in the background. They're happening all the time in the background. And it's just to carry out these essential functions of digestion, sleep, waking cycles, etc., like that are happening all the time. And one of the most important ones, most well-known, is the sleep-wake cycle. These circadian rhythms, circa meaning to go around, rhythms, is really incorporating this value of time, how time is affecting biological systems, how time is affecting the living organism. So that influence of time on the physiology, it's really examining how these cycles of day and night, cycles that are happening within the physiology, all of these feedback loops that are happening all the time right now, how it's really being held together, how it's providing energy for the physiology, how every single movement of the physiology is providing for more and more energy, happiness, effectiveness, in every single regard. So these circadian rhythms are really allowing us to connect back with ourselves. And this is something that, is happening on living systems from these day and night. Plants are experiencing these effects, animals are experiencing these effects. And as human beings, we are living in such a fast-paced world that we can grow a little bit out of sync with these circadian rhythms. Everything is accessible to us 24/7, 365. And so we can easily get out of rhythm, but it's very easy to get back on track. You don't have to do a complete overhaul of your day. Just a few gradual changes can bring back that balance and affect everything else in that same way. So these are some simple, essential routines from that Ayurvedic perspective to create this effortless change and allow us to be in sync with these rhythms within our physiology and also nature around us. So this is a knowledge that Ayurveda has had about time and how it affects the biological systems. Ayurveda has long since known this. And it's a knowledge from Ayurveda known as Dinacharya, Dina meaning day, Charya meaning routine. So routine of the day or daily routine. So this daily routine from Ayurveda sees this 24-hour day divided into 6 equal sections of 4-hour increments. So it looks something like this. If we look at our 24-hour day and it's divided into these 6 pieces, we can see from 6 to 10 is one portion, 10 to 2 is another portion, like that. Now, the different doshas are more predominant at different times of the day. So, for example, say Kapha dosha is more predominant at 6 to 10 in the morning and 6 to 10 in the evening. Pitta dosha is more predominant in the middle of the day from 10 to 2, and also in the middle of the night from 10 to 2. And Vata dosha is more predominant from 2 to 6 in the early morning and 2 to 6 in the early evening. So these cycles are happening every day. It's happening right now also, that these different doshas are more predominant at different times. Now, how does that link to what we're talking about in terms of this word habits? So Ayurveda recommends that we do these different things that we know about, eating well, sleeping well, all of that. It's not just what we're doing, but also when. So Ayurveda is really focusing on the when as well as the what. So the when becomes very, very important. If we know when to do what we're doing, then those functions of those what we're doing becomes even more, it produces even more results, more beneficial results for the physiology. So this is where habits come into place, that these routines that Ayurveda recommends starts to become more effortless. We just go into these routines, and then the more we do it, the more that the body just starts to even just feel, oh yes, this is when I want to go to sleep. This is when I want to wake up. We don't have to tell anything to the body. The body automatically is in sync. So these habits are things that are allowing us to be in sync with ourselves along with the environment around us. So let's start with the first habit. The first habit here is about the sleep-wake cycle. Now, Dr. Lonsdorf last week had a beautiful lecture on sleep. So she goes very in depth into this topic. And if you haven't had a chance to view that lecture, I would definitely recommend that. It's on miutalks.org. You can go and look at her lecture and all the previous ones as well. And the sleep-wake cycle is one that I want to start with because it's kind of a foundation in one way. It starts the day. There's a saying that says the day starts the night before. So this is why I wanted to start with sleep and waking up. So how we start our day is also dependent on the night before. So how you're feeling today can also reflect on the kind of sleep that you got the night before or the nights before also. So that's very important. Now, sleep has a huge effect on the physiology, and this is something that Dr. Lonsdorf, talked about on the effect of how sleep, changes the physiology, getting proper rest, the importance of that. And we know that as it starts to get darker in the evening, we start to feel a little sleepy, start to feel a little tired. We start to feel the whole activity of the day, kind of catching up, and we have that feeling of wanting to rest. And as it starts to get darker, the body is also responding to that change in the light. The pineal gland starts to respond. It has light sensors, and there's that secretion of melatonin that starts to tell the body it's time to go to sleep. And we might feel that also, around 9 o'clock, start to feel a little bit sleepy. But when we're in this 24/7 day, There's still maybe some internal lights in our bathroom, in our bedroom, in our living room, or in the computer screen. That value that still kind of is telling the body to stay awake. So we might feel that initial sleepiness around 9 o'clock, but then there might be like, oh, let me just do this one more thing. I'll just check this email. I'll just clean these dishes. I'll just one more thing. And then suddenly it's the middle of the night, suddenly like that. And that sleepiness is gone. Now, Ayurveda has a whole understanding of this. Ayurveda recommends going to sleep in that kapha time of day. So you can see here that kapha time is between 6 and 10. So Ayurveda recommends going to sleep in this kapha time. So what this means is that as it starts to, get darker, we want to really maximize this kapha time and go to sleep around, starting to really turn everything down around 9 and 9:30. We're in bed so that we're really bringing those qualities of kapha into our sleep. What are those qualities of kapha? Again, kapha is more that earth value, so more of that heaviness. We want our sleep to also have those values of heaviness, that deep sleep. So we want those qualities of kapha to come into our sleep. So that value of deep sleep, that value of heaviness, that solidity kind of feeling, that one that's allowing us to get a deep kind of rest. We want the quality of our sleep to be infused with these kinds of heaviness, solidity, etc., like that, so that we get a deeper kind of rest. Now, if we're able to look at the quality of sleep, that's very, very important. The when. It's not just getting how much, the quantity. That's also important, but it's also looking at the quality of sleep. So we want our sleep to have more of those kapha qualities. Now, Dr. Lonsdorf mentioned so many different bedtime tips, sleep tips to kind of help with that. And what I would suggest is really starting to develop a sleep routine. Perhaps, setting up that alarm clock, just to say, okay, it's time to turn things off. One thing that has been really helpful is just dimming the lights. That makes such a difference. It's like, oh yeah, you start to feel sleepy a little bit earlier. So just dimming the lights is really helpful. And especially for those who have insomnia, some things that doctors recommend is just not brushing your teeth in a brightly lit bathroom. Just that can also kind of disturb sleep. So just having dimmed lights that are there and really starting to think about the next day, maybe prepping some things for the next day. So when you wake up, you're ready to go. But that sleep, really looking at that time before sleep and creating some simple routines for yourself. Perhaps, like closing the shades, keeping the bedroom very dark or at a certain temperature, having some aromas that are there to help, such as slumber time aroma, something that we have from Maharishi Ayurveda. So some aromas that are helping to settle and soothe the mind, doing some oil massage to the feet, a little bit to the top, the crown of the head. That's also soothing, settling. Also avoiding anything stimulating too much at night. So anything that's stimulating for the mind or for the body, it's hard to kind of come out of that stimulation and then settle into sleep. There's a beautiful quote that I think it was Charlotte Bronte said, that a ruffled mind makes a restless pillow. And so that's that same principle. We don't want to have a ruffled mind. We want to have a mind that's very easy, calm. It's just easily settling into that sleep and bringing those kapha qualities into our night so that we're able to have that deep value. And then Ayurveda talks about that waking portion. So Ayurveda recommends waking up in the vata time of day. Again, vata is that lighter dosha. It's made up of space and air, predominantly air. So waking up more at that lightness of the day so that we carry with us those lighter qualities into our day. So vata qualities, have that value of lightness, clarity, the value also of enthusiasm. We want those kind of qualities to be something that we carry into our day. You'll notice that if we kind of go later, we're waking up into the kapha time beautiful time to go to sleep, a little bit harder to wake up in. We might feel a little bit heavy, groggy, needing something just to kind of wake us up like that. So Ayurveda recommends waking up in Vata time, carrying those qualities like those of the rising sun into our day. So naturally, our day has those values of lightness. It has that value of, energy also. Now, if you're feeling like that feels like just too much, I don't know if I can wake up at 5:30. The main thing is not to even worry about that. Really, it's just looking at that sleep routine. Having a consistent early bedtime allows us, one, to wake up naturally early also. So that will come naturally, effortlessly, but we really look to the day beginning the night before with our sleep. One thing Ayurveda also recommends is to slowly do it in natural, like small increments. If one is going to bed very late, then maybe for 1 week, we just consistently try to go to bed 15 minutes earlier, then the next week, 15 minutes earlier, next week like that, dimming the lights, avoiding electronics at night or that blue light at night, that's more stimulating for the mind, for the body, like that. So we slowly come back, and then we'll notice that as we're coming back consistently, slowly, then we're also waking up consistently and slowly in that Vata time, bringing that energy into our day. When we're waking up in Vata time, Ayurveda recommends so many things of that early morning period. For example, the benefits of oil massage, when we're doing an oil massage, how it's very grounding for the physiology, it's very calming for the physiology. It also allows detox for the physiology. And there's different kinds of oils recommended for a person with, say, more Vata, Pitta, Kapha, like that. So oil massage is something that we can do. Ayurveda also recommends, before we brush our teeth, just even cleaning our tongue. If you stick your tongue out in the morning, you might notice different, maybe a coating on the tongue. That's just an indication of how our digestion is doing. And so scraping the tongue is also a wonderful early morning routine. It kind of gives us an indication of how our digestion is doing, what we should maybe kind of focus on eating that day as a result of it. So scraping the tongue, brushing the teeth, oil gargling, even a nasya, which is oil to the nose. There's so many beautiful recommendations of things we can do in the day that's allowing for that prevention, allowing for the body to feel nourished and strengthened, and really, starting the day very, very strong, very rooted in ourself. So much self-care as we begin the day, which really allows us to begin the day in a very centered way. So in this way, waking up at 5:30 in that Vata time brings those qualities of lightness, energy, dynamism into our day. And how we're sleeping is also affecting our digestion, which I'll be talking about. But you can see that, like waking up in that Vata time, it really allows us to feel that lightness going into that heavier, part of the morning, and really allowing us to feel by the time we get to lunch, oh yeah, I'm definitely hungry. So we'll be talking a little bit about digestion coming up. The next habit that I'd like to talk about is our meditation routine. Now, what is this word routine having to do with meditation? We know there's so many values, so many benefits to doing our Transcendental Meditation program, or TM program. And I'd like to just talk about some other aspects of this. I call it kind of like a 3-in-1, which is also incorporating that value of yoga, pranayama, and TM as part of a meditation routine. So Ayurveda recommends this, in the morning. So in the afternoon, we say we can do TM twice a day. So doing this meditation routine in the morning also brings, we start the day connected to ourselves. So we start with these Maharishi Yogasanas. Yoga means union of mind and body. And so yoga is also allowing for any kind of stresses, any kind of stiffness or strain or tension in the physiology to start to get loosened. And there's that connection of mind and body. And then after Maharishi Yogasanas, we go into doing pranayama. Prana is that value of energy as well. So it's an alternative nostril breathing technique that's really allowing for that individual breath to be connected to that value of that cosmic cycle, cosmic rhythm, or cosmic breath, we can say. So there's that softening of any stresses. There's that deep kind of connection to the physiology. And in that, loosening from yogasanas and that softening from pranayama, then we just kind of slide into the transcendence when we close our eyes and we do our TM program, TM Siddhis program, naturally, effortlessly like that. We transcend and connect to that field of that unified wholeness, that field of really the greatest power, that absolute field. And within that, we then, do our program and we bring the energy and that connection back into our whole day. So we start the day rooted to ourselves in that way, and we bring that value of connection into all of our actions during the day. And then we might start to feel a little bit tired, in the afternoon from whatever the activities or jobs or things that we're doing during the day. And so again, we pause and we take some time to have that deep kind of rest that TM offers, that deep connection. So again, we have this meditation routine again in the afternoon, early evening, like that allows us to come out feeling refreshed into the next part of our day. So this is such a beautiful way daily, consistently, to really allow the physiology to enjoy a deep, deep kind of rest, feel that connection, feel that wholeness. And in a natural way, we're enjoying the benefits of that all of our actions are effortless, almost that things are happening as we're thinking of it. It's just so natural. We're so in tune with nature, with everything around us. So in this way, this meditation routine allows for any stresses or any strains that might be, incurred by the physiology, from whatever actions that we're doing, to be dissolved. So nothing is really taking root in the physiology like that. And it's just a natural, easy way, with these different yoga, asanas, pranayama, meditation, to really maintain that connection with the self. And really without that, there's a greater chance to feel that disconnection. So this is a beautiful technique to come back home, feel that easiness within. The next habit is talking about digestion. And really this habit number 3 is really looking at making the main meal at lunchtime. Now, why is that? Now, if we look at this diagram here, we can see that lunchtime is when pitta is most dominant in the physiology. So this pitta time, again, pitta is predominantly fire. So it's that digestive fire that is the strongest at lunchtime. So we have our main meal at lunchtime. And that means if we're having the heaviest meal at lunchtime, it'll be more easily digested and absorbed. All the nutrients of what we're eating will be absorbed by the physiology. We already know things, we should eat well, organic foods, things like that. So we know the what, eating well is important, eating nutritious food is important, but when we are doing it is also important. So having all of those, organic, non-GMO, all of those kinds of foods, but having the main meal at lunchtime, the heaviest foods at lunchtime. And Ayurveda recommends favoring warm, cooked foods, warm things that are warm, like warm water, room temperature water, avoiding things that are cold, avoiding things that are going to put out that digestive fire. So more warm, nutritious, cooked foods, cooked with love, eating in a very settled environment, cooked with some spices that are having all 6 tastes. And that's also something Ayurveda recognizes, that there's many tastes, not just sweet, sour, salty, but also pungent, bitter, and astringent. So incorporating all 6 tastes is also helping digestion. So it's also softening any cravings we might be having. So in Ayurveda talks about the importance of how things are cooked, the importance of how we're eating as well. So this idea of the main meal at lunch has so many other recommendations by, sitting to eat, not watching TV or, other things that are dividing our mind. So just being very simple with that settled attention on our physiology is also helping maximize digestion. When we're having the main meal at lunch, you might ask, well, what about breakfast? What about dinner? So if we look at this chart, we can see that breakfast and dinner are both happening at kapha times. And kapha is that heavier time of the doshas, more earth quality that's there, more heaviness that's there. So we have the main meal at lunch when pitta is more enlivened. And during this kapha time, and also when pitta is more enlivened, we can see that with the sun. The sun is at its highest at noon. So that digestive fire is also the strongest at lunchtime. At breakfast time, what we see is that it's more kapha time. And this is when the sun is just, starting to peak in the dawn is breaking like that. So it's a beautiful sun, but it's very soft. It's not at its zenith like it is at lunch. And the same thing in the evening, the sun is starting to set. And so it's not the strongest like it is at lunchtime. So breakfast and dinner are also important, but more simple, more lighter in quality, being more self-referral, so eating breakfast, a little bit, not too late, like say before 8 or so is important so that we have a little bit of gap and we're hungry at lunchtime. And then also the same thing at dinner. This is really important to have a little bit of a lighter, earlier dinner. If we're having foods that are very heavy at breakfast or at dinner, it's already a heavy time. So it might be harder for the body to digest that. It's more of a in a kapha time. And especially at dinner, if we're having dinner very late, then it's hard to go to bed and really have that dinner digest in the physiology. Sometimes we're just taking our dinner to bed with us. There's no real chance for that natural peristalsis during the day to kind of digest that food. It might just kind of be sitting there at night, and then we wake up in the morning. And then if we have, again, heavy foods in a heavy time, we're starting the day with a lot of heaviness. So just changing this, just not even looking at what you're eating, but just shifting to having lunch as the main meal, where we're sitting, enjoying our meal, makes a huge difference for the strength of our digestion, for the strength of absorption of all of those nutrients. This is a keystone habit that triggers, so many positive benefits for energy, for absorption, all of those things of that value that beautiful food is nourishing to our physiology. So this is really, really important, a very important habit. And in terms of habit number 4, yes, and so this is also another importance that we see that this area, this is where we are resting, and this is where we're really focusing on digesting. So this is that value of rest and digest that's also important. And it's really interesting if we look at all the news stories these days with intermittent fasting. It's so in line with Ayurveda in terms of that, not eating after, say, 7 at night until the next morning. That 12-hour kind of fast that that intermittent fasting is recommending. It's kind of what Ayurveda has been saying, that after we have that dinner, we really give the body a chance to rest and really a chance to digest and detoxify anything from the physiology. And then we wake up and in the next day, and then we have our meals like that. Now you might ask, well, Shakri, look at this pitta time in the middle of the night. Couldn't I eat something there because there's that energy value from pitta that's there? And I would say it's a really good question. But this energy of pitta, that fire of pitta at its highest, there is there for detoxing the physiology. It's there for rejuvenating the physiology, for recharging the physiology. That energy is also there just to make sure that there's no, strains that are being attached to the physiology. The body is having a chance to throw off any kind of, impurities that which it doesn't need, so that when we wake up in the morning, we have that natural elimination that's taking place of anything that wasn't needed. So we're really seeing that digestion is at its optimum strength that's there. So this is a really lovely way of looking at the importance of rest as well as the importance of digestion. And just shifting to this way naturally makes the food that we're eating more readily absorbed and assimilated into our physiology. So when we look at habit number 4, we come into exercise. Exercise is so important. There's so many benefits of exercise. And this is also something that Maharishi Ayurveda recognizes. And you might say, yes, exercise is important, but when should we do it? When is the optimum time to exercise? So just as the sun, starting to rise in the morning, Ayurveda recommends that morning value of exercise that's there. And so you can see this is, that kapha time, again, some heaviness in the environment. So taking time to exercise, bringing that energy into our day that exercise gives is very, very valuable. So we start the day off, with exercise, and that gives us that energy that lasts through the day, all the benefits that last through the day. Now, you might say, I have so much going on in the morning. It's really hard for me to also fit in exercise. Is there another time to do it? And so another alternative time is, sometime before the early evening. That's also fine, in Vata time. That's also fine to do perhaps, around 3, 4, like that. And what Ayurveda recommends is we don't want to exercise too, kind of going into kapha time, because here is where we're wanting to settle the physiology for sleep. Exercise increases metabolism. It's giving us energy. And so at night, we don't want to do a really intense workout that's kind of revving up the metabolism. We want that rev up during the day to kind of give us that energy during the day. But at night, we want to start to settle. So it's better not to exercise too much, after, say, 6 or so. And then you'll notice it's kind of bypassing this pitta time. Especially for someone who's pitta, having more of that heat kind of value in the physiology, and especially in the summer, which is a little bit more pitta, especially right at noon. It's better not to have some intense exercise. That can actually create some fatigue in the physiology. It's just too much heat. It's too depleting. So perhaps not too much, in the middle of the day. That's when we really want to focus as lunch, as the main meal of the day. But exercise is so important, has so many benefits for the physiology. One of the benefits is happiness. And that might seem counterintuitive sometimes to think, oh my God, exercise, that feels like too much. But if we just think it's bringing happiness to the physiology through this release of endorphins, it actually improves our mood. It decreases feelings of depression or anxiety or stress. It also produces, change in the whole biochemistry of the physiology. So it actually brings happiness to do exercise regularly. It also, as we know, helps with weight management in terms of maintaining a steady weight, because this is also really making sure that our metabolism is getting, like a proper kind of surge. So we're making sure that the metabolism is strong, then weight is naturally being managed effortlessly. It's also giving strength to the physiology. It actually helps bones, it helps muscles. So in terms of bone density, this is also something to think about from early age, even, through our whole life, this value of strength that it gives the physiology. It also helps, I say, with swastha, which is that connection back to the self, because it's helping to prevent really any chronic diseases from developing. This is because, regular exercise has been seen to decrease any kind of instances of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, blood pressure, things like that. So it reduces chronic disease from taking root. And so I like to see it as, or I like to to say that as really the benefit is in enlivening that connection to the self, or that value of swastha, because it's preventing anything from getting rooted in the physiology like that. It's also helping with brain health. That improvement of circulation also to the brain. It's energizing. It helps with memory. It helps with thought connections. Very, very wonderful for brain health as well. And it's incredible for sleep. There are studies that have shown that consistent exercise for those who are experiencing insomnia showed reduction in those symptoms over time. So wonderful for sleep. And also for digestion, also for circulation. Exercise, so important. So regular exercise is absolutely wonderful. And even just, a walk in the rising sun brings that value of energy into our whole day. So that's something that Ayurveda recommends. Just a simple walk, that we can do in the early morning, 10, 15 minutes regularly, brings that quality of clarity and connection and those values of that rising sun into our day. A person who's more vata oriented, it's better for them to have, things like that value of walking simple, because vata again is more movement. So exercise that has too much movement can cause that vata person to go a little bit out of balance. So we want just simple exercises for that vata person. Walking is wonderful. For that pitta person who might have a tendency for a little bit more heat, things that are a little bit cooling are recommended. So perhaps swimming, walking in nature, walking by a beautiful river, things like that, and really avoiding exercising in the middle of the day, especially in the summer, things like that are just too overheating. And for a person who's kapha, who perhaps has a little bit more of that earth value, a little bit more tendency to heaviness, regular exercise is so important. And so maybe even something a little bit more vigorous is fine for a kapha person. They might not want to do that initially. They might be like, no, I don't want to do that, But once they start exercising, they love it. They feel the difference. There's a huge difference because that heaviness is being, kind of diminished, and like that the value of swastha is really being enlivened. So they feel more connected, feel more lighter in their mind and in their body. And the last habit I want to talk about is this understanding of seasonal routine that Ayurveda brings in. So we've talked about the daily routine. Now I just want to expand it to the seasons. Ayurveda can see, that value of change that's happening in the different seasons. And there's there's doshas that are enlivened in the different seasons as well. So you have pitta that's more enlivened in the summer, more predominant in the summer, vata that's more predominant in the winter, and kapha that's more predominant in the spring. So really being aware of the change of seasons is also really important. There's that quote that says, to everything there is a season. Seasonal change is so important. It's in so much of the literature of, how beautiful the spring season is, or the fall season, things like that. And seasonal change is also important in our health, because what starts to happen is that the body is adapting to those seasonal changes. So as we go into the summer and it's very hot outside, the body has to regulate that inside. So that digestive fire starts to regulate itself. And so we have to be really careful in these change of seasons by the different foods that we're eating, the different routines that we're having. So some things that Ayurveda recommends, if you'd like to do a cleanse, it's a good time to do it in the change of seasons. So to do it, before we go into the next season, for example. What this allows is any kind of strain or stresses, or maybe some impurities that have accumulated in that season, have a chance to get detoxed, dissolved. And so we don't carry that into the next season. There's seasonal imbalances as well, such as hay fever season or cold and flu season, things like that are part of the season. So we want to maintain health and vitality in all the seasons. And one way to do that is just to be aware of the change of seasons. And if you'd like to do a cleanse, things like that, it's good to do it in that gap between seasons where one season is ending and another season is beginning. That's a beautiful time to do something like that, but it's also a very important time just to be aware and a little bit more focused on our health, because it's a delicate time of transition. So just being more aware of the foods that we're eating as the weather is changing, you know, things that we're wearing, things like that. And for example, for a person who's more pitta, perhaps in the pitta season, they have to take a little bit extra care in that season. Same thing for a vata person, kapha person, like that. And maybe favoring some more of the foods of that season in the pitta season, in the vata season, and the kapha season. There's specific foods that are more balancing for pitta, more balancing for vata, more balancing for kapha, like that. So this is just to kind of expand our understanding of the different seasons. And in this way, we go very naturally, looking at all the different seasons. We see that this routine starts to get developed, and routine comes from this word root, which means path. And so we are naturally taking this path towards our own health, towards our own happiness, this path really coming home to this, field of ease that is within us. And this real path is one that provides proper rest to the physiology, that provides proper activity to the physiology. So the physiology is naturally enjoying rest and routine every single day in every single season. And it's very effortless. These routines become a habit. These habits become involuntary, and we don't have to spend so much energy thinking about anything. It's just automatic. We start becoming very self-referral and in tune with the cycles around us. And our actions, the efforts are very effortless, and the results of those actions become multiplied. So I hope these 5 essential habits are ones that bring you joy, and I wish you joy multiplied. And thank you so much for having me today. It's been such a pleasure to be with you, and I'd love to talk about any questions or anything like that.
Thank you, Shankari. That was absolutely wonderful, succinct, and yet very complete. I know everyone is going to remember all of these 5 essential recommendations and habits. Sleep, wake cycle, very important. Meditation routine, and you're recommending yoga and pranayama. If you have the time, it's a great way to kind of, as you said, slide into your meditation and improve your practice. Main meal at lunch as opposed to dinner, which many people are used to. The 4th one was exercise, and the 5th one was seasonal routines. We do have a few questions that have come in, and then we have a few important, very, very exciting announcements as well for upcoming events. The first question was, what about if I'm having trouble creating that habit? I've tried to do some of these things, and I'm having difficulty with regular practice, getting into the habit. Any recommendations for creating a good habit?
Thank you. It's a really great question, and one that we get asked a lot. And one thing that's simple is just to focus on one habit. Any of these habits that I've mentioned today, we kind of call them keystone habits because they affect everything else as well. So just starting with one affects everything else. So for example, just our meditation routine, just one thing helps everything else. So we can just start with that regularly. And as that becomes part of our everyday, we can add something else. The best way to add a new habit, you don't have to even try to stop an old one, is just add something new. Just focus on adding more positive habits, and the old ones, they just kind of fall away. They're not really getting much attention like that. But I would just say start with one and know that that one is affecting everything else. Exercise, we see the benefits on mind, body, emotion, sleep, digestion. Just starting there, it affects everything else. Just starting with meditation, it affects everything else. Starting with sleep, it affects everything else. So wherever you start, just know that these habits are affecting everything else, and we just start simply.
Great, great advice. Another question, several questions are continuing to come in. How do I know if I'm a Kapha, Pitta, or Vata person? Can I read about it and learn about it, or is that self-diagnosed? Should I try to find an Ayurvedic practitioner?
Beautiful question. So everyone has all three doshas, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, to different degrees of predominance and combinations like that. There are, for someone who's very new, there are quizzes online that can kind of indicate what combination you might be, where there might be some imbalance, and then kind of the next steps with that. There are books that are out there, and all the lectures that we've had before are beautiful references. There's also our Maharishi International University has a master's course and a bachelor's course in Maharishi Ayurveda that also has more knowledge that's there. And also consultations are a wonderful way. There's a technique called pulse diagnosis. It's called Nadi Vigyan. And this is a beautiful way to really look at the way that the doshas are interacting within our physiology. So we can really see in that way, what is going on in our physiology, what our foundation is, and where there might be some imbalance, where to put our attention on. So those are some resources I hope that are helpful.
Yes, very good. Thank you. Another question that has come in is, would you recommend exercise such as a morning walk after or before our meditation routine in the morning?
It's a really good point. And I would say first, if you can do it in the morning, to do it in the morning. Do it before or do it after. Just do it in the morning. I think for some people, for example, they like to do it before they meditate. They are kind of in tune with nature. Then they sit down, do their yoga, pranayam, and meditation, and then they start their day. For others, they start after their meditation, they feel more connected and they feel more connected to nature. So I would just say, if you can do it in the morning, beautiful, just to begin. And there is such a beautiful softness in that rising sun, that connection. So I think just being in tune with that and walking in the morning, it gives that energy naturally.
Very good. Another question regarding the Maharishi Yoga asanas. Are they sufficient enough as an exercise, or do you recommend other exercises in addition to that?
So from my perspective, Maharishi Yogasanas are not necessarily exercise. They're more for union of mind and body. So it's not that I have to get into a certain pose. I have to strain to get into a certain pose, or I have to think about all these things. It's just, it's not even about the pose. It's about the internal experience. It's a union that's there without strain. Naturally, there's this flexibility and openness and flow that starts to develop. So I would say yogasanas are not really exercise. It's just more of a unification. Exercise is more something like, having a walk, or just something that's involving the cardiovascular system, like some cardio, some strength training that's there. Those kinds of things are more exercise, and it's important to have both.
Very good. Another question. At the moment, I naturally wake up at 8 a.m. And you suggested to wake up around 5:30. Does this mean I should set an alarm and my body adapts with time to the earlier wake up time?
That's a really great question. No, definitely, you don't have to force yourself to get up at 5:30 a.m. Doing that regularly might not create that enthusiasm or that lightness consistently during the day. It's better to actually just look at our sleep. Looking at our sleep cycle is more important. So the earlier and regularly and consistently that we go to bed, or have that simple bedtime routine to have a deeper quality of rest, the body naturally starts to wake up earlier. So I would say it's not a 1-day thing or 2-day thing. It's just a slow, consistent shift towards an earlier bedtime, bringing those qualities of kapha so that we can wake up with that happiness and lightness and the enthusiasm for the day at 5:30. Otherwise, it's very difficult. And the alarm can also create a a jarring effect. We might be in a very deep state of sleep at that time. So we just want to naturally wake up. And the way to do that is by the day starting the night before.
Okay, well, that's great. That's very good advice. Another question that has come up. This is from a few different people, actually, and it's getting back to this idea of how do I fit all of this in? And you had a good answer before, which is start with one of them.
Yeah.
Go to bed at a certain time, or make lunch your main meal. The question came up, is there anything you could do during the half-hour lunch break that would help?
That's really, I think, so there's two parts to your question. So the first part, if it's feeling too much, I'm in the same boat with you. I feel that right there with you. And I just want to say that this is something I experience every day. I have two teenagers. And so this is something that I'm very grateful for, because it gives us some structure. It gives us some feeling of ease. And it's not, if it's overwhelming, I would just say, just start with one thing. Just one simple thing, and then that becomes a habit. Then it's easy to start with something else. And so it's really more about freedom than feeling like, oh, it's too much. So just start with one thing. With that lunchtime from Ayurveda, lunch is recommended sometime in that noon period, say from 12 to 1 or so, like that. I want to read a quote. There's a beautiful quote about lunch that I found from Aldous Huxley. It said, a man may be a pessimistic determinist before lunch and an optimistic believer in the wills of freedom after it. I just love that. The importance of lunch. It shifts your mood, shifts your feeling of expansion, just having that nourishment. So in that half an hour, whatever period we have for lunch, what I would say is really just being present with the food, really just sitting, enjoying the food, taking in the visual value, taking in the smells, taking in the textures, chewing slowly, putting the fork down, really being self-referral with that, really, being one with the food that we're eating. And then if possible afterwards, just not rushing to the next activity, just sitting, pausing for a moment, allowing that digestion, giving gratitude like that, perhaps taking a gentle walk afterwards, just having a break, connecting, to the nature around us, to our breath, things like that. Just allowing pause before we start the next activity, whatever that might be.
Very good. This gentleman asks, he said, I work at 8 a.m. to do my entire morning program, have breakfast and exercise before work. I need to actually get up at 4:30, which doesn't give me enough time for sleep. And I think the question here is there a priority? Should I get myself up earlier just to get all of that in, or should I favor sleep?
Yes, that's a really good point. I remember when I was going through this knowledge and studying it, I felt like if I just did everything from Ayurveda that was recommended in the morning, I would be ready for my breakfast by 11:30 in the afternoon. My whole morning is like that. So I would just say sleep is really important. Sleep is very important. Don't shortchange yourself on sleep. So be regular in your program, but don't shortchange yourself on sleep, and just be easy. There's no trying to force anything like that. Just be easy. But I would say, what can we at nighttime do just to have an easy bedtime routine to allow for that deep quality of sleep, like that.
You're kind of suggesting one way to handle the sleep is it's before the sleep. It's actually the night before, going to bed earlier if possible.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yeah.
Another one is a heavy lunch makes me tired.
Yeah. So what I would say is maybe look at the quantity of food also. So the quality is something that's heavy, but perhaps we don't we don't need a lot of quantity of it. For example, there's a difference between 2 plates of lasagna and 2 bowls of soup, for example. So the quantity of food is also important, but the quality of food, it's better to have a heavier meal at lunchtime. So what does heavy mean? Heavy means that it's a little bit harder to digest. So for example, if something is having cheese, that's a little bit harder to digest, it's better to have it at lunchtime. Any kind of non-vegetarian food, it's better to have it at lunchtime. So more of those kind of heavy quality of food, but the quantity doesn't have to be, a huge quantity, just being more self-referral. And really, it makes such a huge difference to put the fork down or the spoon down, because then we suddenly feel, oh yeah, I'm full, I'm good, I don't have to eat this whole thing. So just really being aware of how much we're eating, how fast we're eating, how connected we are with the food that we're eating, how settled we are, that also makes a difference.
Wonderful. I don't know how we would get to all of these questions coming in through email and the chat, but I think we do have to draw it to a close. But I should mention there are 4 extraordinary events coming up, and I did promise to mention that. But before I do, I just want to thank you, Shankari. Your talk was, as I mentioned, succinct yet very complete. And there's a lot of people in the chat who are coming in and also through email just thanking you for taking the time, because it was very, very helpful to them. So thank you for that wonderful talk.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Tomorrow, at the same time, on the same Zoom link, we have Dr. John Hagelin, PhD, the president of Maharishi International University, and the title of his talk is Higher States, Bursting the Bounds of Waking Consciousness. Dr. Hagelin, the president of MIU and national director of Maharishi Foundation, will explain how the discovery of higher states, referring to higher states of consciousness, and their universal accessibility through the TM and Advanced TM City program, which is rooted in Vedic literature, radically changes our understanding of consciousness and the limits of human potential, with far-reaching implications for individual and society. That's tomorrow at 11 a.m. Central on the same Zoom channel. Then another event tomorrow, which is another extraordinary individual. This is an interview on TM Talks, which takes place every Sunday at 4 p.m. Central Time. And there's going to be an interview with Chandrika Tandon. Chandrika is considered one of the top global business leaders in the world. She's a noted humanitarian and philanthropist, as well as a Grammy-nominated musician. Her foundation is dedicated to serving humanity by playing leadership roles in higher education and the arts. Chandrika is currently the vice chairman of the Board of Trustees of New York University. She's the chair of the board of NYU's Tandon School of Engineering and is a member of the board of Lincoln Center of the Performing Arts and the President's Council of the Berklee School of Music. She's really an extraordinarily talented and one of the most successful women in the field of business in the world. And that will be, 4 p.m. Central Time. And to find the Zoom link for this, go to tmtalks.org. You can also go to tmevents.org to find all of these different events and find the connection details. So that's 4 p.m. Tomorrow. Then a great an honor we have on Wednesday, November 25th at 12 noon Central Time. That's Wednesday, November 25th. Dr. Tony Nader, MD, PhD, will be offering a Facebook live stream event entitled 5 Tips for Your Mental Survival. Dr. Nader is an author, medical doctor, and neuroscientist trained at MIT and Harvard, as well as a globally recognized leader in the fields of meditation, yoga, and the development of consciousness. As Maharishi Mahesh Yogi's successor, Dr. Nader is the head of the International Transcendental Meditation Organization and oversees all of the consciousness-based programs in the fields of education, health, business in more than 100 countries. In this live stream event, Dr. Nader will walk you through the steps to find balance in these challenging times of uncertainty. So again, that is on Wednesday, November 12th, 12 noon. You can go to the Facebook page, just go to Facebook, and you don't have to have an account at Facebook. You just go to facebook.com and put in the search field Dr. Tony Nader. And at that time, that's Wednesday, November 25th at 12 noon. Finally, there's a really special event coming up on December 3rd. The David Lynch Foundation and the Nationwide Transcendental Meditation Program will be hosting an online concert and celebration entitled Meditate America for a Healthy Nation. And that will be on December 3rd, 6 p.m. Central Time. Again, you can go to tmevents.org to find out more about it. It's a free benefit online celebration and concert bringing transcendental meditation to healthcare workers, veterans, and families under trauma and stress. This specific concert and celebration is co-hosted by the award-winning actors Hugh Jackman and his wife, Deborah Lee Furness, as well as ABC's Good Morning America co-anchors Robin Roberts and George Stephanopoulos, and ABC's medical correspondent Jennifer Ashton, MD. The concert will be featuring special performances by noted artists Sting, Graham Nash, Elvis Costello, Keisha, Angelique Kidjo, and Jim James, as well as the Brooklyn Youth Choir. All of these artists are coming together to raise awareness and funds so that people in need, including healthcare workers, first responders, veterans, and families in under-resourced neighborhoods can all learn the Transcendental Meditation Program. Thank you very much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow at Dr. Hagelin's lectures and all of these events. Again, to find the connection details, just go to tmevents.org. One more time, thank you again, Shankari Wegman, for this deep insight into daily routines and the 5 essential things that we should be thinking about to create balance and happiness and health inside. Thank you again. And we look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Goodbye.